Thank you for listening to the Drunk GM podcast. I'm going to be talking about tabletop role-playing games, and hopefully today I can prove my love for gaming is stronger than my love of beer. Dan Cook here, and welcome to episode 1 of the Drunk GM podcast. Some of you might be recognizing my voice from the Many Savage Worlds podcast, which was my previous project, which has now ended, but not sadly. The previous project ended to make way for this new, bigger, better podcast I'm hoping to put together for everybody. So part of my goal with this new show is to entertain and educate as I wrote it. Well, I'll be doing a lot more entertaining than educating, I assume. Although I've been role-playing a long time, 20 years almost, I don't always know what I'm doing, even still today. I'm an improv GM. I only know half the rules when I play a system, and I like to recruit good players who can help me and that are good role players because it just helps make everything run smooth when I have no idea what I'm doing. With that being said, I'll talk a little bit about myself and where I come from, game-wise. I don't think you guys want my life story, but if you do, email in and I'll send you the first draft of my memoirs. So I've been role-playing about 20 years now. Started out with D&D, of course. My mother's... it was my stepdad. They're no longer together. But he introduced me when I was in my early teen years, maybe 12 to 13, me and a friend of mine. We didn't use any rules. We barely ever rolled dice. It was pretty much an improv exercise. I don't think he was a very good GM looking back. I think he was probably having a nostalgia moment missing role-playing himself, as I think a lot of us find as we get older into adulthood and we don't have this gaming group anymore. So he wanted to introduce that to the people that he had around, which was me and my best friend. I enjoyed it, and after being exposed to this, we went out and picked up some books. We read them. We never really got to play. I used to go down to the local library. I would take out D&D books or print PDFs that I found online, which was probably very illegal pirated books. But at the same time, I was like 12 years old, and what did I know about copyright law? I mean, even now in my 30s, I'm not sure I understand copyright law. But I immersed myself in the world of D&D, read it, studied it. I read the monster manual for weeks on end, but never had anybody to play with. So when I was a couple years after that, maybe 13 or 14, I joined this website I found, and it was like looking for local gaming groups. I found one in my hometown, my hometown is not small, but I don't live in a big city. So I was lucky enough to find this group of guys, and keep in mind I was 14 years old. Well, they were like 16, 17. Sent them a message, and I was like, hey, I'd love to role play with you guys. I'm still really new. I don't know what I'm doing. Blah, blah, blah. Again, this is almost 20 years ago. I have no idea what the email said. But they got back to me. We met up at I think we met at a local pizza place the first time around, just to make sure that we weren't all like a bunch of weirdos that were looking to kidnap each other. It went well. They were really cool guys. And I started a Saturday night gaming. Oh, they already had it, but I joined into their Saturday night gaming group. Go over there after dinner time. We'd stay up all night playing role-playing games. We watched anime. It was really cool, and it was kind of my first adventure into this world. Unfortunately, I haven't talked to any of these people since I left that group, which was probably about 6 months to a year after joining. I'd love to get a hold of them. Unfortunately, I can't remember any of their last names. So, here we are. They played... Let me see, what did they play? They played Rifts, which we only played a few times as a group, and they played a lot of Shadowrun. Shadowrun became my first love in role-playing games. I still have my 3rd edition rulebook that I've had at least 15 years. It sits on my bookshelf. I can see it from where I'm sitting recording this right now. Playing this game with them created a passion in me that I never expected to have. I was only with the group about 6 months, and I think that's just because life happens, and I may have had school obligations or things like that. I honestly don't recall. But it was a mutual break in the group. I didn't really fit their style. They were all experienced role players that were also really good friends. I was a brand new role player, didn't really know what I was doing, didn't know the rules, didn't really know these guys. But I remember them being really nice and really supportive. At least that's the way my mind remembers it. Now I'm going to keep it that way for my own little nostalgia effect. But fast forward down the line, a GameStop opened up in my town. And this is where it all really started. A couple guys opened up this shop downtown, and if I recall correctly, it was called Whiz Bangs. And they sold books and miniatures, dice, and they had a couple tables in a back room. This was a really small location. You could only run... Actually, it was one table in the back room. You could only run one game at a time. They also did a lot of tabletop mini games, like Warhammer, I believe it is. I'm not sure. Tabletop, like, miniature warfare games were not my thing, but they built big prop and terrain, and it was really cool. I just never got into it. But I started hanging out there with all my friends. We would buy books, we would buy minis, we would sit and paint our minis. They had mini painting days where pretty much everyone just sat around a table painting minis together. It was really awesome. And I went there every day after school. I was there all weekend. This place became my second home. And unfortunately, I can see why they went out of business, because most of their clientele was me and my friends who were maybe 15, 16 at the time and didn't really spend any money. We might get a book. Between the entire group, we might buy one book a week. But that's not enough to keep the lights on. But they were kind enough to teach us a lot about role-playing. We joined in their groups occasionally and played games with them. This is where I was first exposed to Vampire the Masquerade, which I was so bad at. I was 16 years old, and if there's one thing a 16-year-old does not understand, it's political intrigue. So I had this guy let me join. I'll tell you guys a horror story real quick. I had this guy let me join his Vampire the Masquerade setting. Me and my best friend, the same one I learned how to roleplay with, a few years before that. And we made our characters, and he did it like an adult group, like how I would treat my group nowadays. Okay, you guys own the book? Cool, make a character and show up. Well, in Vampire the Masquerade, there's two factions, and he said you can be either the good faction, which I'm drawing a blank on the name, or you can be, there's a couple neutral factions, I believe, or clans. They're clans in Vampire. For all my listeners that are Vampire fans, I remembered. Don't send me hate mail. Unless I'm wrong, it's not clans, and you can send me some hate mail. So we made our characters, we wrote a little backstory, but they were really basic backstories, because we were teenagers, and we sucked at role-playing still. But we had so much fun. Well, he hated our backstories. He said that we all did a terrible job, except for one kid who I had known my whole life, and he is one of the smartest people I know. He wrote this very long 2-3 page backstory that had all kinds of intricate details and secret hidden histories, and it just became this really great thing. I'd like to pause right now and apologize if anybody hears any awful background noise. The landscaper just showed up, and for some reason he's weed whacking my patio of all places right now. So again, if you hear this awful background noise, it shouldn't last long, and bear with me. I'll try to go in and edit down the background noise, but I don't know if it will work. So, back to my really boring story. Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah, so my buddy, his name's Mike. Mike, if you're listening, I haven't talked to you in a long time. Send me an email. I don't know if you even still roleplay anymore. He wrote this really long, complicated backstory. GM loved it. Said he's the only one who really gets what we're doing here. But he let us all play anyways. We had session 1. Everybody meets at the house of the prince. And we get tasked with retrieving an ancient artifact. I believe it was a samurai sword. Actually, I know it was a samurai sword. I have no idea why we needed it. But that's what we were tasked with doing. Alright, we all leave. We go our separate ways. And then I decide, you know what? Because I had a few real-life friends in the group, those were the ones that I was going to gravitate towards because I felt most comfortable role-playing with them. So I say, okay, I'm going to call Mike's character. The GM says, well, you never said that you were going to get his phone number. I said, well, what do you mean? Of course I got his phone number. Isn't this assumed? He said, well, no, you guys didn't role play it. Okay. Can we retcon it? Nope. You didn't get his phone number. Now, everyone right now is probably shuddering and saying, wow, what a dick jam. He's playing with 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids. And there were some adults in the group, but still, what a piece of shit. So, for a long time, I felt like this was my bad and that I had fucked up the situation. But it turns out he was just a shitty GM. So, we say, okay, fine, we'll roll with it. We both just roleplay that our character's going to start wandering the city at night until we bump into each other. He allows me and the person who was my best friend who made the other crappy background, his name was Nate in real life. I don't remember his character's name. So, me and Nate meet up somehow. And we find out where the sword is through some investigation and role-playing, whatever. And he allows all this. We end up at the house. It's a 2-story house. We get inside somehow. All very easy. He's allowing us to do all these things. Now again, Vampire the Masquerade is very political. It's not a combat game. We have to burst through the door. But most of what we had played our whole life was D&D and Shadowrun. So we get inside the house. We find the sword on the second floor. It's locked inside a display case. One of us keeps a lookout and the other one smashes the sword and grabs it out of the case. Now this entire, however many part story arc was about getting this sword. Probably through political means and dialogue. But we had never played Vampire. We didn't understand what was expected of us. We had read the book, but we were kids. So, when he grabs the sword, an ancient samurai ghost manifests and cuts one of us in half with the sword. Or maybe his own ghost sword. The details are a little fuzzy here, because again, it was a long time ago. So one of us dies instantly. The other one, clutching the physical sword, jumps out the window of a second floor and lands down on the grass, and is going to just take off running, hoping that the spirit is bound to the building and not the sword, but I think we all know that's not the case. The ghost reappears beside him and cuts him in half as well. Now, there were no dice rolls, there was nothing. The GM says, you guys don't understand what this game is all about, and throws us out of the group. And that was it. I never played Vampire the Masquerade again. I've listened to it now as an adult, some actual play stuff, because I really enjoy role-playing game podcasts and actual plays. They keep me inspired from my own stuff. And a lot of the reason that I'm doing this is because of one particular RPG podcast that I discovered when I was in a big gaming slump. Vampire is intriguing. I like the idea of it. I think it could be really fun with the right group of people. But those people are not 16-year-old kids. So, that's my horror story. That GM is a huge dick. If I remembered his name, I would tell him to go fuck himself on air. But I don't. He was just a really weird old mouth breather that hung out at the game shop with a bunch of 15-year-old kids. After leaving Whiz Bangs permanently because they shut down. Not immediately after the Vampire fiasco. But at some point in the future, we left and we're back onto role-playing on our own. This is when role-playing slowed down for us. We were older, closer to finishing high school, moving on to having jobs and girlfriends and things like that. Mike, the one with the long backstory, he went off to college. The rest of us did not. And I entered my first role-playing slump. Put together a home group many years later. I probably didn't role-play for a good 5 years or more. But I put together a little home group and we played some Shadowrun here and there. But they always fell apart very quickly. Really crappy little, mostly a series of one-shots connected by the same character sheet. Not that much fun anymore. And then I got into 3.5, Dungeons & Dragons, 3.5 edition, and a little bit of Pathfinder, which were very similar, at least from Pathfinder core book. And those home groups were fun. I met new people that role-played that I knew from around town that I didn't know were role-players. And it was cool, and we did that for a little bit too. But those always fell apart. And now I find myself, I mean not currently, but at the time I found myself in my late 20s. And I couldn't find a group to hold together to save the life of me, and I was role-playing gameless again. Started listening to role-playing game podcasts. I started feeling really inspired, and I started to hear a lot about this setting called Savage Worlds. And I thought, man, Savage Worlds sounds really cool. You can do anything, and some of the setting books that were coming out for it were amazing. So I checked it out. The core book's super cheap, and started playing it. I joined the community online, started talking with other people. 2 things I want to say about Savage Worlds as a whole. I'm going to talk a lot about Savage Worlds, but the 2 things that I love the most. Savage Worlds is super simple. Well, I retract that. Savage Worlds can be fairly complicated, but it's simple enough to run. There's no charts. As a GM, Savage Worlds is super simple to run. That's what I want to say. As a GM, Savage Worlds is great. And the community for Savage Worlds is the most amazing online community I think I've ever belonged to, and maybe possibly even my entire life. Everyone's so supportive. Everyone is so happy to lend in and pitch a hand if you need anything. When I announced that I wanted to put together my first podcast, I got this huge outpour of support. I mean, mostly it was just likes and thumbs up, but it makes you feel good when you put yourself out there that, hey, I want to do this project, and people are like, yes, do it. I want to listen. I eventually put out an ad looking for co-hosts for people to join me for the project, which, again, this project I'm speaking about was the Many Savage Worlds. I'm thinking I'm going to re-release the old episodes on this new channel at some point. So you may, if you're new to the show and you never got a chance to listen to them before, you will get a chance in the future, and there will be new Many Savage Worlds episodes coming out again on this channel, The Drunk GM. So I put out an ad for some co-hosts, got a couple guys that were interested. Now I figured I was just going to get random guys like me who were like, yeah, I really enjoy it, and like that would be cool. Because I made it clear this was a first-time podcast, and I had no idea what I was doing. I ended up getting one guy who runs a very successful, or I say very successful, I don't know if he would, he might say moderately successful. He, really great, humble guy. He runs a really great YouTube channel, which is now expanded into podcasting. Bobby Evans, The GM's Table. Check him out if you don't already know about him. But if you're listening to my show, there's a good chance that you've also listened to his show, because we have a lot of crossover between our fans, I think, except his fan base is much larger. He covers a lot of really great topics. Smart guy. I mean, I was blessed to have him come on and just help me understand setting creation. He, really brilliant. I won't talk about him for too long, but check out his show. Another guy I got was Nathan Carmen, who is a published third-party publisher for Savage Worlds. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. One of the great things about Savage Worlds is they let people publish whatever. You have to get approval, but then you become a third-party licensed publisher, and you can put out your own books. Nathan publishes his own Savage Worlds books and volunteered to work with someone on a first-time podcast. It was amazing to have him on there. Really great guy, really smart, and super, super talented with the stuff he puts out. Tricky Troll Games. Check him out. Drive Through RPG. RPG Now. Same thing. Get some of his books. They're really cheap little mini settings. Yeah, I believe he calls them mini settings. And they're awesome. We're actually getting ready to play with him GMing one of his settings for us, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a real blast. And I also got a bunch of other people who wanted to be part of the show who were just kind of regular guys like me. And I decided to bring on a man named John Myers. John, I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name, buddy. It's either Mayers or Myers. And I'm going to say Myers, John Myers. That sounds right to me right now. I'm terrible with last names. And if you're ever a guest on my show, or you write in or post on Facebook and I shout you out, I'm going to get your name wrong. And we're just all going to have to accept that and move on with our lives. So John is an older gentleman, and he's been role-playing a long time, came from D&D, found Savage Worlds for the simplicity. And I brought him on just to bring a little bit of that sagely wisdom that comes with someone who's been role-playing for so much longer than us. And John's been great to have on. And yeah, he's kind of like one of our fantasy experts. Nathan is too. We all kind of have our own things that we really enjoy the most when it comes to role-playing. And it's been a blast working with these guys. And I continue to work with them on the new episodes of that same line of shows. Which, again, I'll say it for like the 5th time now. I will be still producing the Many Savage Worlds shows under this new channel. And it'll be the same hosts, and as you guys know, it's kind of a revolving chair of who's available that day, because we all have very busy lives. And, yeah, keep an eye out for that. Those guys are great. The show's great. We have a lot of fun creating Savage Worlds settings out of core rulebook, just talking about what it would take to make them based on different genres. And, but I started this conversation talking about how I got into role-playing. So I made it all the way up to when I started the first podcast. Well, we're about 6 months from creating my first podcast now. Started putting it out there, and I started having ideas for other things I wanted to talk about. And I felt like I couldn't do it on the other channel because it was the Many Savage Worlds podcast that was focused on setting and world creation. I decided, you know what, I'm going to do a rebrand, and I'm going to step up my production value when I do it. I at least want some intro and outro music. I'm going to work on learning how to edit in case there's big breaks in the audio when we take breaks from being on air, because we record as a group through Google Hangouts. Or if somebody like coughs or sneezes, I'm going to edit it out. Those things just seem really sloppy and amateur. Been working on that a little bit, and seems to be going okay. But I digress. When I put together the new show, I went out, I got some new, I got an artist to do the new logo. I already had the hosting services set up for the previous podcast. Got everything situated, switched over the host, switched over some of my social media, and then it all started to go to shit on me. When I switched over the host, I lost all my subscribers. It brought over the old content, but with new subscribers showing up to this content that makes no sense contextually because it has a different intro, there's no music, it literally being introduced as a different show, I had to take them all off the feed. So now I have this podcast with no content, no subscribers, after 6 months of work putting together a small fan base, but still a fan base. So that's okay. I'm going to work with it. I'm just going to start re-releasing. No problem. It's only 6 months setback. I can do this. Then Facebook tells me I can't change the page that I have dedicated to the podcast because it's misleading that I'm changing the name, and they think I'm duping my 45 followers because they have this policy about name changes, and I understand why they have these policies in place. I appealed it. They told me no. Great. I'll make new social media. I don't even care. So now I have gone out. I've made new social media, new email. I have the new feed, and we're ready to start over here today with episode 1. And that's it. That's my role-playing story. I apologize if that took forever. It looks like it was about 20 minutes, and I cannot give you that time back. You're going to have to just forgive me or send me some hate mail. It's okay. We're all going to be okay. One thing I want to talk about today for the content of the show, besides just rambling about my own life, is player inclusion at the table. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I have set up for a 50 Fathoms actual play. 50 Fathoms is a setting in the Savage Worlds system, published by the people who wrote Savage Worlds, Pinnacle Entertainment Group. And it is a fantasy pirate mashup where it takes place on this weird world, and there's races, not traditional fantasy races, but there are fantasy races, and it's high seas pirate adventure. And it's really cool, and it has arguably one of the best plot point campaigns or pre-written campaign settings. So I've decided to take that on. When I decided to do it, I put out some ads on the Facebook group, a couple different Facebook groups, and said, looking for players, long-term campaign, going to be recorded and released on my podcast. I got some interest, but based on the time slot I'm available, I got 6 people who said they would be able to play. 6 is a large group, but with online gaming, people flake and drop out and fall off all the time. I've done some online gaming before this campaign, and it's a nightmare. I'd like to say for all the people that listen to a different podcast by a bunch of GMs who tell you that there are less GMs than players and you will always find players if you advertise your games, this is not true. At least not if you're me. If you don't have the skills to articulate yourself well or to network properly, I'm not really sure what my problem is, but I just don't get the interest that I figured I would based on this huge surplus of players that want to play online gaming. So it doesn't work like that. I've put up interest posts and had literally nobody sign up for games that I wanted to run one-shots or whatever the case may be. So I got 6 people, and I said, wow, this is great. This one's actually gonna come together. And I started putting together a recording schedule, reaching out to everybody, giving them some background story. And we set up a session 0. I hadn't really given it any thought. I was really excited. I was super pumped. Everybody was in a group chat, and everybody was talking to each other, and it was awesome. Then I sat down for session 0, and I do it through Google Hangout. I mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of Google Hangout. Audio, video, it's easy to record. 4 people made it to session 0. One person was sick. They've since left the campaign before we even started. Health reasons. No problem. I totally understand. I'm glad they did it before we started. The other player, much like me, he works third shift, and he fell asleep before the session started because I do a Friday morning session after I get out of work. Now, I'm tired. I drink a lot of coffee to stay up, but I understand how somebody could be tired and fall asleep. I totally do. No, it's not okay. It's not okay to miss sessions. But yes, I do understand. And I'll give him a second chance because everybody deserves at least one gimme, mulligan. So I had 4 people show up. 2 of them I'd role-played with before, and 2 of them I didn't know. So out of the 2 strangers, and again, guys, from my actual play, if you're listening, I'm not talking shit. All right, I'm just being honest because this is what this podcast is about for me, is talking about my gaming experiences. If you want to get all butthurt about it, sorry. So I had these 2 new players, and one of them made me a little nervous, I'm not going to lie. From interacting with this person, I said, man, I don't know if this person's a good fit for my group. Has a weird sense of humor, seemed to have that social awkwardness going on. And that made me think, man, did I make a mistake bringing on these people I'd never worked with before? Now, my brain said, listen, we're doing an actual play to be recorded and released on a podcast. Of course, only good people are going to show up. But people who are weird, or people that are horrible role players, which I don't know if these people are, I haven't actually played with any of them yet, they don't realize they suck at this. And again, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to say, oh, well, they suck and shame on them. But they don't know. They enjoy the hobby, and that's why they do it, because they enjoy the hobby. And it takes me back, reminds me of my Vampire the Masquerade story that I told earlier. I was a terrible role player, but I enjoyed the hobby. I enjoyed sitting down and playing with these guys. And they were like, nope, you suck. Instead of helping me and guiding me, they threw me out of the group. Well, after session 0, I sent a message to the group chat, and I said, guys, this is a recorded actual play for my channel that I'm trying to build a brand with. Even if it's not big and great and huge, I want to put out quality content for my listeners. If there's one person who listens, they deserve to get the best show they can get. And our first session will not be part of the plot point. I'll be writing my own adventure. And if you guys don't cut the mustard, if you guys just don't fit the group well, I'm going to be asking you to leave. I don't want to do that, but I will if I have to. Everybody seemed okay with that after reading the message. I got thumbs up, and, we moved on and went back to our regular conversation about what we wanted to do with our characters, etc. I think as a GM, it's important to be hard with your players. Maybe not hard, firm. It's important to be firm with your players. You're in charge. You've put more into this game than anybody else. And for someone like me who's recording this content, I have the most to lose. I could be wasting hours between playing the game, writing the game, running the game, editing the content, promoting the content, putting it on my channel, having people say, wow, that really sucks. We're going to unsubscribe because that episode was so bad, I don't even want to hear what else he puts out. And that's not what I want to happen. But with that said, I started to feel like I was back playing Vampire the Masquerade when I was 16 years old again. I was being told to get the hell out of the group. So, since then, I've decided to give all the players a chance that have signed up. I will be recording my first session with everybody. And if there are shortcomings in their role-playing, their delivery, or their behavior at the table, then I will try to address it and try to give everyone a chance to stick with the game. There's a lot of really weird people that play role-playing games. Socially awkward people. People with really over-the-top sense of humor, and maybe not in a good way, where they just laugh at their own jokes uncontrollably because they're the funniest person ever. There's glory hogs. There are people that just can't help but make jokes because they have to be the funny one in the group, even though they maybe aren't that funny. Or maybe they are funny, but it derails your role-playing. People that can't take it seriously. One of my buddies, Bobby from the GM's table, told me a story about somebody who wanted to play a dog in one of his role-playing games. In a D&D game, wanted to play a dog. Not talking, not, just a regular old-fashioned dog. Bobby, I apologize if I didn't have permission to tell that story. I don't know if the person who did that was someone powerful and influential, and it's going to bring down wrath on both of us. And, the Illuminati of D&D. But if it was, I apologize. But I think at one point in everyone's role-playing career, we were the bad, weird role players when we were either first learning, or maybe even now today, somebody would look at you and say, you can't play at my table, you don't get it. And that could be a really crappy feeling for guys and girls like us that, I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for myself and some of the people I've met and seen in the role-playing community. Picked last for dodgeball in gym class. Maybe picked on in the high school hallways for the way we talked, looked, dressed, things we like to read. Sure, that happened to me. I could say that. Now I've moved on and I'm an adult, and I'm comfortable with who I am now that the nerd renaissance is coming around, and man, gaming's cool again, and nerds are chic. Well, fuck you guys. I was a nerd when I was fucking 10 years old in the goddamn mid-90s when it wasn't cool. And, I was wearing those weird tie-dye Walmart shirts with fucking Bengal tigers on them and shit and dragons. And, but I digress as I go off on a tyrant about how nerd cool is a bunch of bullshit. I mean, I think it's nice people are talking about these hobbies and talking about nerd culture in a more positive light. But, again, I derail myself from what I want to talk about. I think it's important to give every player a chance because we've all been crappy players, weird people that nobody wanted to play with, and you never know how good somebody's role play will be. I had a player in my home group that I played with for years and years and years and years, and I don't think he'll ever listen to this. But if he does, take it with a grain of salt. I can say some mean shit sometimes, especially when nobody's listening when I record this all by myself here. He's not the brightest person I ever met in my life. His roleplay was weird sometimes. He liked to play over the top people, and he didn't. I'd put out concepts. Hey, here's what I envision for my campaign, and he would do something a little off par for what I wanted. But over the years, he became a really good role player, and I really loved playing with him. Now, if I hadn't given him a chance to grow as a role player, I might not have ever seen him at his peak. I've had other guys that I thought were great role players right off the rip, understood the rules, really great character concepts, but then when you put them in a situation they're not comfortable with, for example, I'm thinking of a particular D&D player I know who makes great D&D characters, because D&D is all about tropes and stereotypes. When I introduced them to Savage Worlds, I started by running a zombie apocalypse campaign because that's what we had been talking about playing before I found Savage Worlds, and they said, let's just stick with our original idea. I wrote up some basic stuff, mostly ran it out of core, straight up, didn't know what I was doing yet, literally first time ever playing Savage Worlds, and I was GMing it. I said, I want to be regular, everyday people stuck in the zombie apocalypse. And he played a knight. Plate armor, sword, battle axe. And I said, well, what the fuck is this? Well, I work at a Renaissance fair. Actually a really cool concept. But the thing about Renaissance fair actors they are not trained knights. You say, well, I work at a blacksmith hut, so I have some blacksmithing skills. What else did he do? Well, he could fight. He had a battle axe. He was really good at fighting with it. And some other pretty basic skills. Okay. Well, his fighting's way too high for someone who's a professional actor. He wouldn't actually be able to fight. It's a choreographed dance. But you know what? Again, being social awkward gamers, I was trying to be non-confrontational because this home group was all I had at the time to roleplay with. I was just getting back into it. I was just starting to really enjoy it. And I allowed it in my game. I hated it. I thought it was the worst decision I ever made allowing him to play this character. And that group eventually fell apart. I don't play with them anymore because of busy schedules. And then I told them I needed a little hiatus because of my work. And I never heard back from anybody again. Maybe after all these years not playing together as a group, our expectations and what we wanted from the game just weren't the same anymore. And I wasn't providing the content that they wanted to play, which is okay with me. I feel perfectly fine with that situation. I've since moved on to online gaming, where I get to meet new weird people every week, or every couple of weeks, or whenever I go out and recruit new players. And online gaming is great. I want to do an episode about online gaming at some point. Online versus tabletop. or online versus in person. I usually refer to it as tabletop because you're sitting around an actual table playing. But I want to talk about the pros and cons of those two different things at another time. I won't go into that too much right now. I mean, those are some of my thoughts on player inclusion. I think my biggest thought on player inclusion is include the players, right? Part of this hobby is allowing it to grow and nurturing it for people at least people like me who enjoy it so much that we produce content for it. We have to allow everyone to be a part of it. We can't be elitist scumbags, even if we really want to be. If I wasn't recording, I wouldn't care who joined my game, more or less. If you can play what I want you to play, understand the outline of the game, and stick with it, then you can play in my game. If I say we're going to play modern day zombie apocalypse, well, don't make don't say I want to play Spider-Man, or I want to play, and sorry to my real life player who did this, but don't say I want to play like a barbarian from D&D, or I want to be a half-orc barbarian, and it's like, well, no, it's modern day. Well, here's what I was thinking. No, you weren't thinking. You are an ass hat who wants to do their own thing. Go play D&D. I'm not running D&D this week. But as I stated previously, it's not always easy to find players. So sometimes when you do this, you're giving up your group. Have a mature conversation with them instead and say, listen, man, here's my vision. If you guys want to play fantasy, we can play fantasy next time. Either a new campaign, one shot, whatever you may run. I like to... In the past, I was keeping things short and simple. Now I'm getting into my first long-run campaign with 50 Fathoms, and I'm really excited about that. Again, I used to also homebrew a lot, and now I'm seeing all these published settings, and I'm really enjoying having someone else write the stuff for me. And I have already written some stuff for 50 Fathoms that I want to run, some content I created myself that I'm really looking forward to putting out there based on some of the adventure seeds in the book. So again, I didn't do it all myself because there is this really long, great, detailed, awesome book to be inspired by. All right. Well, I think I've beat the talking about players in your games and why we need to let them play in our games because we're not high school bullies, unless we are, in which case, fuck off. But that takes care of that piece of the content. And it looks like we're at almost about 40 minutes now. It's not bad for an episode 1. For everyone who made it this far, I'd like to thank you all for listening. Personally, I have an outro that's going to say thank you. It's pre-recorded. You'll hear it on every episode. Thank you so much for sticking with me. This is my first time recording an episode by myself, full-length episode. Just me, without a co-host or anybody else to provide content to bounce off of. It's not my preferred method. I would rather work with a co-host. And if I think this is absolutely awful, if you guys tell me, hey, listen, man, that content just wasn't that great. Yeah, we listened to it, and you're a really cool guy with like the best voice in the whole wide world, and you're really handsome and funny. I know you guys are gonna all say that anyways, but if you guys, write me in telling me that I'm the greatest person you ever met in your life, but this episode just wasn't that good, maybe I'll try to schedule some time where I can do this with a co-host instead of by myself, if that provides better content for you guys. Because my goal really is to push out the best content for my listeners that I can. I can sit here and ramble for hours and hours and hours about things that nobody cares about because I work night shift and I don't get to talk to the real world. So I talk to myself in the form of a podcast. And you guys are stuck listening to the crazy maniacal ramblings of someone who hasn't slept in 2 years. So I think that brings us right about to the end of episode 1. Keep an eye out in the future for some more stuff coming out. I don't know what you're going to get next. Again, I want to re-release some of the old Many Savage Worlds stuff onto this new channel for new subscribers who come in. And if I do that, then that's pretty much ready to go. It needs a little bit of editing, add in the intro, outro, but that will only take me, a matter of minutes to get it put out. 50 Fathoms will be starting really soon. From the recording date, I'm 2 days away from recording session 1. Again, I'll be editing a little bit of that. Where it's an actual play, I might try to do a little more production value on that. Don't hold me to this, guys, because I don't know what I'm actually going to find the motivation, time, or ability to do. But I might try to put in some cool background stuff. You'll be able to hear the cannons fire and the crashing of the waves. I don't know. Those are my goals. You can expect some more stuff like this, some generalized GM ramblings from the table. Things I think about and things I know nothing about, but I talk about anyways. Book reviews, yeah, so that's the future of the show. This is episode 1, and that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed our episode today, and if you did, let us know. You can join us on Facebook and Google+. You can reach us by email, or you can leave us a rating and review here on iTunes, which helps us out quite a bit. If you'd like to help the show more than that, you can visit our Patreon. All the information's in the description below. Cheers.